Now, how long do these interactions last? Well, as long as the hormone is bound to that receptor, it's going to cause something to happen. So if we were to look closely at the receptor, what we would see is we would see that it has a space to bind that hormone. When the receptor binds that hormone, something's going to happen. And what happens relates to how the receptor is built. Receptors have two parts. They have a ligand binding domain. This binds the hormone. And they have a functional domain. And this does whatever the hormone does when it binds that cell. Actually, that's a terrible explanation. And they have a functional domain, and the functional domain is what that receptor does. What this means is that now we have a scenario where a hormone can bind receptors that have the same ligand binding domain. It won't bind a receptor with a different ligand binding domain. Can't do that. But if the functional domains are different, then that means that the hormone can have different functions. So this one may turn something on, this one may turn something off. An example of this in your system would be norepinephrine, which causes vasodilation. That's the dilation of blood vessels in the muscles, and vasoconstriction, the constriction of blood vessels in the viscera. Why? Because this is a hormone released when you're really stressed. And when you're stressed, you don't really care about those viscera doing things like digestion. You really want your muscles to get you the heck out of somewhere. So your muscles get the majority of the blood. So you can imagine where one of these functional domains would cause vasodilation, and that's the one that would be found in the muscles, and another one might cause vasoconstriction. So one hormone can actually have many effects, and this is something that can get really confusing with endocrine. But if you think of it like your body wants to release this signal that does a bunch of different things, it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, once our receptor has bound this hormone, now this interaction, this functional domain, is going to remain in, it basically changes shape, and it changes to an active shape, and it's going to remain like that until something happens to shut it off. What are these things that happen to shut it off? Well, one of them is that the cell can internalize. Oops. The cell can internalize the receptor. This means that this receptor goes from the outside of the cell and it kind of gets sucked into the inside of the cell. And once that receptor is in the inside of the cell, now it can no longer interact with hormones. It's kind of neutralized. Another thing that can happen is that you can have another molecule block the receptor. So basically, the receptor goes from its active state, where it is ready to accept this molecule, to where something internal to the cell binds to it. And when the thing internal to the cell, and this would just be another chemical that's released by the cell, when that binds to it, it causes this molecule to become in an inactive shape. So now when that hormone comes in, it can't interact and it just bounces off. The last thing that can happen is that the hormone's action gets inhibited. And what I mean is that hormones typically act through multi-step processes. So this receptor is going to cause something to happen, and that thing is going to cause something else to happen. And there could be some sort of reaction that's going to stop one of those steps. And basically what these things can do is they can make the hormones work for shorter periods of time. So now your body can modify itself so that a hormone can only be active for a small period of time or for a longer period of time.